My name is Terrell Osmond, based out of Toronto. Written for a ton of publications, but wanted to make my own called Studio One, where I interview, acts across the world, acts across Canada. Most importantly, the point of the platform really is to highlight Toronto artists, give them a platform because we don't have too many media platforms in our own city. Even though Drake and The Weeknd, we have these big artists, we don't really have too much. Man. We don't have too many platforms to actually promote our artists. So I wanted to build this for them. So to get you on is pretty amazing. I know I found you on KTT. I'm a lurker, so glad to.
I feel like that, man.
For sure.
That's fine.
Yeah, man. Before we really begin, just briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll get started.
Cool. So I'm Hadji Gaviota. I'm a musician from New York, Queens, New York. I guess like genre-wise, I'd say I touch on a bunch of different things from alternative to R&B to hip-hop to just kind of like some kind of like modern genre blend of like shit I think is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm on all streaming platforms. I have an album called Purgatory that is going to come out in December. So it depends on when this comes out, but it might either be out or like about to be out by the time this comes out. So just look for it. It's going to be cool. It's a visual album. It's got 7 music videos, 7 songs. Yeah, man, I really appreciate you having me too. So.
No, man, no worries. I know I read that you're based out in Queens. Is that where you grew up too?
Yeah, born and raised. I've lived here my entire life. For the most part, I went to college in Philadelphia, and I studied abroad for a semester in Havana, Cuba. And besides that, I've pretty much just been in New York.
Cool, man.
I've always wanted to come to Toronto. That's dope.
No, I
really
fuck with
a lot of Toronto artists too. Just like from Drake and Weeknd, but even like I've been really big on Mustafa.
Yeah, Mustafa the Poet.
Super fire. I know he's a Toronto dude. It's a great scene. I really want to get up there for like OVO Fest or something one year.
No, I love New York. One of my favorite places. But
I've heard they're really similar, kind of.
Yeah, they really are. Same thing with kind of London too. There's like same energy.
Yeah, I love London too, so I feel like I fuck with Toronto heavy.
Yeah. But yeah, what was it like, growing up in Queens, and like what were the artists, that you grew up listening to, kind of?
Yeah, Queens is cool. Queens is an interesting place. It's big. The thing with New York compared to like the rest of the U.S. is like New York as a city is so big that if all the 5 boroughs were their own cities, they would be like the 1st, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th biggest city in America. Yeah. So Queens is bigger than like Philadelphia, just off rip. So it's a really cool place. It's a really diverse place, which is like a point kind of gets like talked about so much that it's like almost a meme at this point. But I grew up around people who were from like everywhere. I kind of just thought the whole world was like that. So I went to college, and then I was like, oh shit, like it's not like that. But yeah, so most of my friends growing up were either immigrants or first generation Americans. My dad was born in Greece. My mom's family's been in America for a while. They're Irish, but so I was like kind of like a 1.5 generation kid because my dad grew up here. And so I was just always surrounded by people in different places, speaking different languages, eating different foods, listening to different music. And then obviously New York being such a big hip hop city, I grew up, big listening to a lot of New York artists, a lot of New York rappers. And then being a kid from the internet, I listened to a lot of like down 30 South ass rap because I just was like on my iTunes page, like clicking shit. So I was just always like exposed to different things. That's the one thing I love about New York. It's like I've lived here my whole life, and I feel like I haven't even really scratched the surface. Yeah. It's a really unique place. It's a really cool place to be an artist now, which I definitely like lucked out on just being born here. Yeah. But yeah, I love it. It's a great city.
Sure. And being an artist and being a musician, I know you went over to Penn. Before you went to Penn, was that even a thought, or was it when you went to I think Jazz and Groove, you were a director?
Yeah.
It was at that time.
Yeah. So actually, I always played piano when I was a kid, and I was like, I had my iPod on like really throughout the day. But I wasn't super focused on making music really until I got to college. Jazz and Grooves was like an artist booking community. It sounds like it's like a jazz band, but like we actually like I didn't play any instruments.
Yeah,
like
it
I
does
was just
sound like
there
that.
like paying artists to do shit.
Yeah.
And so, but it was kind of like by the time I got to Penn, I had like been one of those like kind of like overachiever like straight A kids like my whole life. I just really cared about like school and like extracurriculars and shit. And once I got to Penn, which is really like was like the end goal of like all that, I was like, damn, like I don't want to do any of this shit.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about what I really cared about, and that like I'd always been like super into music and had been like a writer kind of kid. So I started working on my own stuff. But yeah, around the same time, there was this committee at Penn. It's like technically a part of student government called Jazz and Grooves.
Yeah.
And so, well, there's like a bigger artist booking community that does like the big show for like the kids who don't really care about music. Like our show was meant to be like, look, we don't care who you book. Book the coolest artists you can think of. Like, you don't have to sell tickets. Like, don't worry about it. Like, just like take this tuition money and just go crazy.
Yeah.
So my year we had Kevin Abstract from Brockhampton, which obviously I found through KTT too, which is funny.
Yeah. I listened to the podcast that you're on, and you're talking about it.
Oh yeah. And we had Daniel Caesar too, who I know is a Toronto guy. And we had Yeek, who was like a super dope, like kind of indie artist. And so for me, like I was a senior around that time. I was starting to take music a little more seriously. I hadn't really found my sound yet, but getting to watch those artists like at that stage in their careers was super interesting to me because it made it all kind of feel real.
Yeah.
And so I took the things that I learned from watching that, from putting on shows, and I came back to New York to be a high school teacher. I wanted a job just so like I didn't want to just like move back to my parents' basement and like start making music.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to prove to myself that like this shit is real. So I was working as a high school teacher, 7 a.m. to like 3 p.m. And then I would just go to the studio after that. After about 6 months, I think I started to kind of find my groove with like music that I really wanted to put out. And so from there, I dropped one song in like October 2018 called Harajuku that who actually threw like distribution from a guy who I had also met on KTT, of course. And,
of course.
Yeah, that song started doing really well, and I've been distributing my songs through them for the most part since. And that was what like opened the door for me to have like label meetings and all that bullshit. And so from there until now, I've just been taking stuff a lot more seriously and really trying to like hone in on my craft and build an audience and all that good stuff.
How much do you think it like helped you with the first single doing so well? You think it
was huge.
Was that like a weight off your shoulder? Like the first one worked. I now know this could work. Did that help?
Yeah, 1,000%. That was like it's unfortunate that it took like one song getting received well by other people for me to like believe in myself, but it definitely helped.
Yeah.
I really had no concept that anybody was ever going to hear the shit that I was making. Up until that song, and so from there on, like it gave me a whole new perspective. I'm also really thankful that song did well because, and it did well early because I learned a lot about the way artists operate and the way the label system operates and all that shit just through that experience. And I didn't really know shit before, so having like that door open like really helped. Like I got to my first label meeting in like late 2018, and they were like, "Yeah, we love this song. Like, so what you got next?" And I had absolutely nothing, like literally no songs made, and I didn't realize that like I was supposed to have like 100 songs made after that. Like that I would just like if I had played the game like the smart way. But it really taught me to like believe in myself and to trust certain people around me. I played it at a show like a couple months before it came out, and I had a friend, say, "Yo, that song is really good," and I was like, "Oh, like I guess I just wasn't. I didn't really know how to value my own stuff, and you never really know what people are gonna like and what they're not gonna like." But I've come to understand, I think, why people like that song so much, and I realized how much of myself I was putting into it, and that was like the best way to create. So yeah, that song taught me a ton, honestly.
Yeah. And on the note with shows and things like that, was it harder for you to learn to be a performer opposed to you being an artist and releasing music? Which angle of being an artist do you think has been the hardest?
Funny. I actually think I was like natural on stage, like before I was like a musician.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like a part of my personality. I actually had this job in college where I would hand out the newspaper, like the school paper. They would pay me like $10 an hour or $12 an hour or whatever. And I would stand right in the middle of campus, like in the busiest like little corner of campus, where thousands of people would pass me every day. And I would just pass out the newspaper. My job was just to like, hopefully people would take this free paper and like keep walking to their class or whatever.
Yeah.
And I like totally pimped the job out. Like I had like a speaker, like I would be super aggressive with it and like funny. And I like became like a meme, you know, like people would like in like the Facebook group for like the school, they would be like joking about like dodging the newspaper. And
yeah.
Shit. And it wasn't until I had been on stage a couple times that I realized that it's like kind of the same thing. And that was kind of like the same process. It's like I'm just like kind of like dry on stage. I'm like funny, like, and I just kind of like try to be natural. And even as I was like before I had that song do well, I was doing some shows in New York, and I would recognize that like people would just kind of fuck with my energy more than they would fuck with the music.
Yeah.
So I just had to play catch up there. But yeah, I love performing. It's really fun. I get a kick out of it. Like it's just like kind of allows you to be. I kind of like black out when I'm up there.
Yeah.
And just like kind of come back down and was like, whoa. Like I hope people had fun.
And on the note with shows,
yeah,
I usually start these interviews, I guess since March, asking how the artist has been with COVID and things like that, and I totally remember skipping that. But with shows gone, and with quarantine and COVID, how have you been with that, and how's your family and things like that?
And for me, like I love playing shows. I have a live band of 7 people, including me, that I played it. I was playing about 1 show a month in New York. And it was really fun. And everybody in my band was either someone I went to like middle and high school with or somebody I went to college with. So it was all like, these people that I've known really well, and we all became good homies. Like a lot of them have their own music shit going too and like help each other out. It just felt really good to like build that community. But to be honest, like I was getting a little tired of playing New York shows like every month, and I was starting to run out of room to like grow in that space. Like I was gonna have my biggest show on St. Patrick's Day at this venue called Mercury Lounge, which would have been like probably the biggest venue I've played in New York.
Yeah.
And that was like right when lockdown started, so I missed that. Obviously, like for the better, but yeah, like from there, I really told myself like I want to sit back and figure out how to take my performance to the next level before I get back on stage. Obviously, the universe is giving me hell time to figure that out, so I should probably get started on it. But I just I like to study. I would be going to shows like 3-4 days out of the week sometimes in New York, whether it was just like my friends performing or just anytime I see an artist I like going to, I just buy a ticket and I figure out who I'm going to go with later, if anybody. So I would be at shows like 3-4 days a week. A lot of it was like a good combination of just enjoyment, networking, and like studying. Like you'd see these artists on stage and be like, damn, I totally like understand everything that goes into it. Having like both shows, like I recognize like the importance of backline and knowing like what you can bring on tour when you're touring, and like we fucked that up really bad with some artists I really like. Like I don't want to get into that. Like being on that side, like in the moment as a student, I was like, I don't know why they're so mad. But then like as an artist, I was like, damn, we fucked up. We like told them that we didn't have a drum set, and then we had a drum set. So they like brought a drum set from like Florida, and they were like, the fuck, bro? Like there's a drum set, and we were like, oh, but just like watching artists on tour, somebody whose show I really enjoyed in New York was Choker. Choker like brought this like really fancy chair with him on tour, so he like didn't have a band, but he had this crazy chair that he would like sit in for like specific songs, and it was super cool. And I was like, damn, he's just probably throwing that shit in a van and just driving. Yeah. And it's like it's really interesting what artists do like within their spaces and how they make things possible. So I'm always studying and always trying to figure out the best way to make an interesting show. Yeah,
for sure. I think now more than ever, I think a lot of artists have these visuals. 1975 I have one of my favorites, like the way they have their like the boards and visuals, and that's like one of the coolest things about their shows. But yeah, it's so true. I think being an artist now is so much more than just coming out on stage and performing. I think there's so much more like theatrics going on.
For sure. Yeah, it's like it's like anything. It's like any other performance. obviously I'm always trying to work on my like live music singing game too, because like I started making music as a rapper. I didn't think I could sing, and it's been like a slow process of like accepting my voice for what it is, and trying to make the music that I've been listening to since I was a kid, and really allowing myself to figure out what my voice is good at and the limits I can push it to. So on stage, you know, that was like a nerve-wracking thing for me for a while, but
Yeah.
I've just been trying to grow within it. And then also on the performance side and the visual side too. You know, just trying to make everything this big giant thing.
And I read that you think like people don't like albums are like not really that much interest to people anymore. And now it's like singles and things like that. With you, you know, you've released EPs, you've released full length projects throughout your career and things like that. At what point did you kind of look at what's going on in the industry and start to have that viewpoint?
So for me, like with the one like full length project I had, I didn't think anybody was gonna listen to it, and I just love albums. So I was like, I'm gonna make an album. It's gonna be sequenced. It's gonna have like, this is about to be track 6. Like, this is track 6.
Yeah.
Hold on, this is track 5. And then like I realized like in retrospect, like maybe 4 or 5 of those songs as a new artist were like ready for people to hear. And the rest of it, my friends and my mom are gonna like, and like that's it. So I kind of learned the hard way. Like, that I like, you know, it's a different game that you play as like as an unsigned, you know, relatively unknown artist. Like you want to put your best foot forward and present it in a super catchy way so that people will come back to it, because there's so much going on right now that it's like really hard to grab someone's attention to the point where they want to engage and they want to come back. So I did an EP the next year, which was cool too. But I this year decided like, if I love albums so much, like I'm gonna figure out how to just do it in a creative way. So starting since May, I've been releasing a song maybe like every 6 weeks ish, with a video. And so I've done 5 of them so far. The album that's gonna come out is those 5 songs along with 2 more.
Yeah.
Both with videos. And so like I just wanted to make it feel like I was doing the right thing, like release-wise, like having this like kind of visual event behind every song that gives every song a chance to like catch on with people, whether they find it on YouTube or they find it on Instagram or they find it on Spotify or they find it on KTT or they find it anywhere. Like there's just like something that's gonna grab them, and I get that many bullets instead of just like 2 bullets and then the album. Like I just feel like I drastically increase the number of people who find it. And the good thing about packaging it all together in the end is that when you find me in 2021, you can come back to an album, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like, I just saw it as like something that was kind of playing the best of both worlds, or like Trojan horsing an album out into like the single world. And also like I have this cool way that I'm gonna package the whole thing together when it's out. I have the whole thing coming out on VHS. I have like custom VHS boxes with like the albums. It's a visual album.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to just like push the way that I presented something. It's only 1 song longer, you know, than an EP was last year for me. But I feel like the presentation behind it is what makes it an album versus an EP. So.
And with all the videos that you released, I know there's one that I think it's 4049 Spruce. Based on, you know, being at Penn and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
On 2 notes, how important is a video like that, kind of going back to your roots? And 2, why is it so important for you to get these videos, like all of them? 'Cause like you said, you've done it like a video for each song. When did that become like an important thing for you to want to do?
I think I was like conceptualizing it probably late 2019, early 2020. I was just really thinking about like how can I increase my visual presentation, because I was getting tired of just playing like I have one song do really well on Spotify, right? And it's like, you just like, your whole marketing plan can't be like, I'm going to release a song and like hope it does well on Spotify. Like that's just a shitty marketing plan. So I was like, what can I do? It's like more creative than that. And so my strategy was to try to like increase my visual representation. It turns out that there's this kid, Adam Ginsberg, who I went to college with, but I didn't really know in college. Who I met through my keyboardist, who also went to Penn with me, Andrew Ellis, another super dope musician.
Yeah.
And he shot the 4049 video, the Telescope video, the Runner's High video, the 46 and Bliss video, which is not on the album, but also this year. And one of the ones that's going to come out this month. And so having somebody there to like kind of help refine the visual stuff has been like super helpful. The 4049 song means a lot to me, just because like I mean it sucks that we couldn't shoot it at like actually 4049 Spruce.
Yeah.
But so what happened was that's the house I lived in my senior year in college, and I remember I moved in like the minute that like Blonde came out. Like it came out at like noon on like a Saturday or some shit.
Yeah.
And I had like just driven all my stuff into like, and I was like parking in front of the house, and like I checked like my phone, and they're like, "Yo, Blonde is out." I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me!" So I like run into my apartment, like unfurnished apartment, and like just like get on the Wi-Fi and like start downloading that shit, you know. So that house always meant a lot to me. And I came back to play a show in Philly, like it was like 2019-ish, so I had graduated, I had music out that was like starting to do well. And it was a really big homecoming moment for me. And I walked past that house and I saw that there was like a demolition notice for it. So that was what inspired the song. So the first verse is like me falling in love inside the house, and the second verse is like acknowledging that like that house, along with most things in the world, eventually are just going to be like dust in like the least depressing way possible.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, so that song did mean a lot to me. So I'm glad that it made the album.
Sure. Now, in terms of like, you know, going on to next year and things like that, I know you have songs already ready for the following year. When it comes to releasing music and things like that, do you let yourself, I guess, enjoy the music or enjoy the moment and congratulate yourself on like, hey, I made a project or I made a song? Or are you the type of person that's like, all right, I dropped that, time to go on the next thing?
It's a little bit of both. I think I enjoy the music a lot before it's out. Then I get really tired of it by the time it's out.
Yeah.
Like I very rarely, if ever, listen to my own music on Spotify. It's like partially because I don't want to show up in my own Spotify Wrapped when it comes out, because I don't want to see other artists do that. I'm like, damn, bro. But I don't judge it because I get it. That happened to me in 2018. I left one of my first songs like on loop because I thought that was like a beneficial thing to do.
Yeah.
And then it just fucked up my Spotify Wrapped, and like it didn't really make me any money or like give me any clout. So I was like, I'm not gonna do that again. But yeah, like most of the songs on this album were made like in late 2019. I'd say about half of it into like early 2020-ish. So they're all almost a year old at this point, with the exception of two of the ones that I made during quarantine. But yeah, like for the most part, like I sit on music for a while because I want to make sure I enjoy it, 6 months later. Because at the end of the day, like when you put it out, like it's gonna exist forever. And I used to have this idea that like not releasing good music was like wasting resources and stuff. But I think it's important to think about the whole presentation you put behind something. It's crazy when you realize how much music artists should sit on.
Yeah.
Like I used to think like, damn, I made a good song, I should just let people hear it. But it's like, you got to build everything around it. It's not just having the music, and you never know when that stuff will come out eventually. But so I try to just sit on stuff, decide like, am I still fucking with this? Like, can I make this be presented in a cool way? Really think about that, Like I had Runner's High for like 6 weeks, and I was listening to it, and I was like, nah, this is fire. Like, I want to release it.
Yeah.
And then one day I was like, I need to get chased by a samurai in the woods, and that song will make perfect sense, you know? And it's like, if I had just put it out right after, like, I wouldn't have come up with that. So letting myself, like, sit down and, like, enjoy something, I think has always been a really helpful part of the process for me. Like, with music in general, like, you want to make sure that it's going to live longer than, than the average song that you just drop.
Yeah.
I would say.
And the crazy thing, too, is you never really know what's going to happen when something gets released. A song that you think people might not gravitate towards might be the song that everyone gravitates towards.
Facts.
So,
big fucking facts.
But I do think it's interesting that, like, an album can be released, like, today, but most of those songs could have been reworked for the past 2 years, but we wouldn't know, like, as a fan. So
people have no idea. Actually, the funniest shit is the next song that I'm dropping, which is called Guido Miss Karma. I have the earliest of early demos of this hook from like my bedroom in 4049 Spruce in like 2017 on like the most garbage beat that I produced Like, just the idea, like, the vocal idea for the chorus, like, I was doing it back then.
Yeah.
And it's so bad, but it's really funny that it ended up being, like, one of my favorite songs of the album.
Exactly,
Like,
yeah.
I was just sitting during quarantine, like, making a totally different beat, and I was like, wait a second. And I just started doing the shit from before, and I was like, nah, this is kind of hard, you know? So people who hear that song will have absolutely no idea that that's existed for, like, almost 3-4 years at this point. Yeah, it's really funny how that shit works. Like, there's so much that goes into it that people will never know. People will never know how many hands touched the project, how many, like, different cover arts you had before you picked the final one. Like, you'll never know what the weather was outside when you made it or any of that shit. So it's really interesting. It's important to always think from the listener's perspective before you release something, because there can be a huge disconnect between you as the creator and the listener in terms of how they interpret something.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to have people you really trust around you as, like, music listeners. Like, or even, you can even, like, segment it as an artist. Like, you can be like, yo, my homie really knows rap. So if I'm rapping on a track, he's going to know if this shit is hard or not. But I'm not going to send him, like, my most, like, indie pop song and, like, expect him to give me, like, super quality feedback. He's just going to be like, yeah, this shit sounds hard. I don't really know shit like this, but it's hard, you know?
Yeah.
But then you have the homie who really listens to that shit that you send it to, who's then like, nah, you can do this better. And then, you know, you, like, kind of reset from there. So it's really important to know, have, like, just trustworthy people around you, keep it a buck with you. You can have yes men. Yes men are also fire because they give you bad confidence. Just, like, don't put that into the world out there. Like, there's people who I love, who I send my music, and they're like, and no matter what I send them, will be like, this is fire. And, like, even I don't think it's fire, but, like, if you think it's fire, it just makes me feel good. So I'm gonna send it to you.
And sometimes it's not even that they're like yes men. They
like you as a person,
exactly.
So they're gonna like the shit you make, you know.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's great. Like, you should use that. It's gonna, like, boost your confidence, which is honestly, like, 75% of the battle as an artist is just, like, remaining confident and believing in yourself. So if that's what it takes, like, you should definitely do that. But just, like, don't confuse that with, like, you know, real feedback. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, usually when I get to the end of my interviews, I'll, like, ask an artist, you know, like, what do you have following up, you know, like a tour or all the shows or things like that. But with COVID, that's gone. So what I've been doing is like on the fly, like during these interviews, I'll think about a question that relates the best with the artist. So for you in particular, you know, going to Penn and you know, going to school and being a high school teacher, how important for you, I guess, was the educational side before you became an artist?
You know, there's a couple really interesting parallels between education and music that I always found interesting, especially because I played so many roles. You know, I've been a student, I've been in the Ivy League thing, I've been a teacher at the same time. Like, I taught, like, in the Bronx with kids who, like, you know, some of them, their reading levels were, like, 5 grades below, like, the level they were supposed to be, just because of how fucked up, like, our education system is. And so, like, I've really seen a bunch of different sides of the education world. And, like, being on stage and being in front of a classroom of, like, 35, like, 17-year-olds who stayed up until 4 a.m. watching 13 Reasons Why last night and were on Snapchat with each other the entire time, or just, like, falling asleep on each other, is, like, it's, like, the worst crowd ever, every day. You know, it's like how every artist, like, will sometimes be like, oh, I just, like, had, like, the absolute worst crowd at the show, and, like, it's, like, an outlier. Like, that's, like, every day as a high school teacher is, like, getting up and, like, trying to perform to a bunch of people who don't want to hear you.
Yeah.
And it's not because, like, they're not good students or anything. It's, like, just, like, when you're in high school, like, there's so much other shit going on in your life. You don't care about, like, the Bill of Rights. Like, it's, like, come on, bro. I don't give a fuck about this. Like, I want to do something else. So it's, like, really trying to convince people to listen to something or to like something or to hear an idea out. And it parallels a lot to being on stage, I think. And I learned a lot about being on stage from being a teacher and vice versa, I think. And so that was definitely a big thing for me. I think being in, like, the whole Ivy League, like, overachiever student pipeline also taught me, like, that a lot of kids in America grow up, like, just doing something because they think they're supposed to. And then they get somewhere and they just think they're supposed to do this, or they think they're supposed to go be a consultant or a lawyer or whatever, just because, like, they have the opportunity to, and it's like that's fire. Also, like get the bag, like that's what you want to do. But it's like you might be better served in society, like doing something where you're really passionate about it because you're gonna bring innovation and bring ideas and like be more than like just a piece and like something, you know. So it took me being there and like standing at the door of that to be like, maybe I should like pursue these other things, you know. Like I was just like shit posting on KTT like in these classes, and I was like, damn, maybe I should just do something like, you know, this is like more fun.
Me too.
You know, like this is where I'm spending all my energy, so like maybe that's saying something about like what I really want to be doing with my life. And I was also inspired by so many dope other artists that I've seen on KTT, from like Black Star Kids to like Chris Yu, Skywater. There's like so many dope people who've come up through there, just that I know personally, and then a ton of people who were like before me, like Toby Lou and like Kevin Abstract and shit.
Yeah.
So having that like kind of like portal on the internet that like took me somewhere else was like really helpful for pushing me to like kind of pursue my shit. Education is like kind of the craziest, most important thing in the world that nobody who's in power really thinks about. So it's kind of unfortunate. I don't really know, like I'm only speaking from an American perspective, but I'm sure in Canada you guys have some similar problems too.
Yeah, sure.
With politicians not respecting it to the level that they should. But yeah, I mean, it's just been such like an eye-opening experience for me. Really making me think about like how I can use my platform for better. I tried to raise money for Black Girls Code this year. We raised like $2,000, just like from the Hadji Gaviota platform, which I'm really proud about.
Yeah.
And so just like, you know, trying to always stay involved in that shit, never get too big of a head or anything, and just like, you know, making sure that I'm making it like putting a stamp on the world in a positive way, whether it's just with music or just with things that I can do with the platform that music gives me. Like I always want to be creative about how I do it.
Sure, man. Again, man, really glad I found you on KTT. I think I think your music is really amazing, man. I know
Appreciate it, man.
There's only 2 new songs coming with this album, but I can't wait till it's out. And yeah, for sure, man. Definitely we'll continue to do these interviews and things like that. Looking forward.
Absolutely, man.
Looking forward to the next one. And
really appreciate you having me on.
Sure, man. Enjoy the rest of the day, man. Later.
You too, man. Peace.
Studio One.